Another month of the CPL offseason has come and gone, meaning we are only a month and a bit out from the start of the 2022 Canadian Premier League regular season. And as such, many more transfers have been accomplished in the past month as teams look to bolster themselves heading into the 2022 season. These are the biggest moves in the CPL from February. Prior to playing Cruz Azul in the 2022 CONCACAF Champions League, Forge FC was looking to bolster their roster and add a bit of international experience to the roster, and they found that in the form of former TFC man Ashtone Morgan. The 31-year-old fullback is a natural replacement for the recently departed Kwame Awuah, and with 10 years and 168 games of experience with Toronto FC, he is one of the most experienced Canadian MLS players there is. Throw in 18 appearances for the Canadian national team, most recently coming in 2020, and Ashtone Morgan is a very solid signing for the Canadian Premier League. Morgan is one of those guys who in MLS, kind of like Kyle Decker, was a pretty mainstay for Toronto FC in 2013, 2014, 2015, but as the decade of the 2010s moved on and the quality of MLS improved, he really couldn't keep up with the pace at which the league was improving. Following out of favor of Toronto FC, left the team after 2019, signed with Real Salt Lake going into the 2020 season. Didn't play for Real Salt Lake in 2020. He did, however, play a couple games for Real Monarchs, their USL Championship affiliate. In 2021, he played 8 games for Real Salt Lake, splitting the season between the MLS and their USL affiliate sides. So a guy who played a rotational shift in MLS last year is now into the CPL, as Ashtone Morgan at the age of 31 is probably looking to kind of finish out the last several years of his career playing consistently close to home in the CPL. Jose Galan, the journeyman who landed with Valour FC in Winnipeg at the start of the Canadian Premier League's history, played there for 3 seasons, is now departing Valour. After 3 years as a pretty solid international player for Valour, Galan is moving to Bruno's Magpies in the Gibraltar First Division. At 36, this is a sensible move for him, as moving to Gibraltar as a Spaniard, he'll be playing close to home and playing European football, likely to close out his career. Losing Galan will leave a bit of an experience hole and a hole in the midfield for Valour, and they should probably be looking to fill that in the coming month. Sticking with Valour, former Toronto FC Academy player Rocco Romeo has officially signed a full contract with Valour. Romeo spent the 2021 season on loan with Valour in the CPL from the TFC Academy, and following that performance, his contract was not extended for Toronto FC going into 2022 when he was released. Valour is going in and scooping up Romeo. Romeo is a very solid defender for the CPL and a young defender who still has a bit of room to grow and develop his game. He has potential to be a regular on the Valour backline for years to come. The complete and utter dismantling of FC Edmonton and the jettisoning off of anything of value from the club continues, as Amer Didic is going to Pacific. Pacific, after selling Lucas McNaughton to Toronto FC, was reported to get Luke Singh on loan. That deal fell through, and with that there was a Lucas McNaughton-sized hole in the Pacific back line. They immediately rectified that by signing Amer Didic, one of the better defenders in the CPL and by far FC Edmonton's best defender over the last few years. Didic will be a very valuable defender for Pacific, and it's exciting to see him on a team that has a higher level of quality all around than he had with Edmonton. In addition to jettisoning Didic, Edmonton also lost Fraser, who went to Alberta rivals Cavalry, losing both Didic and Aird. Those are two very key pieces in both the midfield in Aird and the back line in Didic, leaving the FC Edmonton squad. Fraser Aird goes to a Cavalry team that just lost Nick Ledgerwood to retirement, so I'd imagine that Fraser Aird kind of fills in the Nick Ledgerwood role in the midfield and kind of just acts as a experienced, stabilizing presence in that Cavalry midfield. And a pause of these rapid transfers just to talk about the FC Edmonton situation as a whole. So the team right now doesn't have an owner. They're owned by the CPL, and in fact, to keep them afloat, the CPL has changed the rules in the league for how many intra-league loans to a single team are allowed. I think the previous allowance was 2 to a single team, as you could loan in 2 players from other CPL teams. FC Edmonton right now is on life support, having loaned in Felix Ensah and Albrecht from York United, and also had Tobias Warszewski sign a contract with York United. The former FC Edmonton man who was under contract with FC Edmonton signed his newest contract with York United just to be immediately loaned back to FC Edmonton. So right now it seems like the rest of the CPL is keeping FC Edmonton afloat, because having a team in Edmonton is quite valuable to the CPL so they can get it running. It is rumored that potentially the Edmonton Elks ownership group might pick up FC Edmonton and own both of those 2 teams. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. But for right now, anything of value has been moved off of FC Edmonton, and really they're a team that, if you thought last season was bad for FC Edmonton, this season, if they don't get an owner ASAP, is looking like it's going to be a complete disaster. Moving from the FC Edmonton horror show to some good news for Canadian football. Atletico Ottawa youngster Antoine Coupeland turned 18 in December, and in February has gone and signed with HNK Ranka in the Croatian First Division. Now, he's currently playing for Ranka's U19 team, and actually he just scored on the weekend for the U19s, which is exciting for him. But he moves to a Croatian First Division team in Ranka, which currently sits 3rd place in the Croatian First Division, which puts them in a Europa Conference League spot, and are 1 point behind the first place, which would put them in a qualifying round for the UEFA Champions League. So going to Ranka, Antoine Coupeland follows Easton Ongaro as another young Canadian talent from the CPL to go play in Europe, in Eastern Europe, albeit, but still in Europe. And actually, he has landed at a team that puts them in very high potential to play European football. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the next couple years pan out for Coupeland as he tries to get his way into Ranka's first team and potentially going to move to bigger leagues in Europe. And after our brief happy spell, back to Canadian disaster as we move on to Ballou Tabla. Tabla moves from CF Montreal to Atletico Ottawa, and Ottawa continues what they started in January of building what could be a very formidable team in the CPL this year. And in terms of pure raw talent in the CPL, Ballou Tabla is probably the most talented player in the Canadian Premier League just when it comes to raw ability. Effort is where the question marks lie for him, and for Ballou Tabla, this marks the end of a 3-year decline of epic proportions, honestly. 3 years ago, he was in Spain with Barcelona B, and now is with Atletico Ottawa in the CPL, falling from Barcelona B to CF Montreal in MLS, and now to the CPL. This is a crash of epic proportions, but with the talent that Ballou Tabla has, he should be useful on a CPL side. And if this move and this drop can jolt him into giving the effort required for a player of his talent to become elite, this could be a stalwart signing for Atletico Ottawa. I don't believe that that is what will happen, but I think his performance against Halifax in the Canadian Championship, where he came on as a sub and scored 2 goals, shows that he will do quite well in the Canadian Premier League, regardless of what level of play he is prepared to play at. And finally, the last major move of February, which happened yesterday, Kwame Awuah was a crucial piece of the Forge for their first 3 years, a fantastic fullback player, and just consistently strong with Hamilton all throughout their first 3 seasons. And following this last season, he was actually on trial with the Vancouver Whitecaps in Major League Soccer. However, due to the player's age and what the team was looking for, they couldn't mutually agree on a contract and decided it was beneficial for him to not sign with them. He has now officially signed with St. Louis City FC 2 in MLS Next Pro. St. Louis, of course, is an MLS expansion team set to join the league next season in 2023. However, their Tier 2 MLS Next Pro side, St. Louis City FC 2, is starting play in the newly formed MLS Next Pro this season. So for Kwame Awuah, this is a fantastic chance for him to impress in MLS Next Pro for a team that isn't coming into existence until next year, to look and say, okay, this is a guy who we want in our MLS lineup when we start playing in the league next season. So basically for Awuah at the age of 26, this is his make or break season. If he impresses with St. Louis City FC 2, he's in MLS next year. If he doesn't, we'll see where he ends up. But this is a fantastic opportunity for him, and as I said in my January big transfers recap video, MLS Next Pro is going to make things very interesting for the CPL to see where players kind of choose to land, because first we had Mo Farsi, now we have Kwame Awuah, and this is a league that if you're a CPL player, this might be a better league if you want to get into MLS. If you can go play in MLS Next Pro, you might have a better chance of ending up in MLS than if you just play in the CPL. And now already we've seen Mo Farsi and Kwame Awuah both jump ship from the CPL to MLS Next Pro, which despite the two leagues supposedly being on the same-ish level, MLS Next Pro is designated as a Tier 3 league in the US, and the CPL is designated as, of course, as a Tier 1 league in Canada. However, most people say that the CPL is in and around the quality of the USL Championship, and I'd imagine despite being a Tier 3 league, MLS Next Pro will be more like the USL Championship than like USL League 1 or NISA. So going to be interesting to see going forward how many more CPL players make that jump, and if the CPL players that do make the jump to MLS Next Pro have more success getting into MLS than the ones who stay in the CPL. So there you have it. Of all the transfers in the CPL in February, those are the biggest. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of the CPL transfers this month and which big transfers you think I missed talking about. As always, if you like this video, hit like. If you want to see more of my stuff, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, link is down below in the description, and I will see you next time.